Lights out here. Well, thanks everyone for coming, and thanks to all the event organizers for putting together this great event. Today I'm going to be talking to you about end-to-end testing. My talk is titled, I like my tests like I like my friends, flake-free and reliable. And some of you are laughing, but you know, the reason why I chose a picture of friends camping outside together is because if you've ever planned a camping trip with your friends, you know that some of them are not reliable. They flake, they don't show up, they don't bring the right things, and the experience isn't that enjoyable. But I want to show you that end-to-end testing can be enjoyable, and it can be flake-free, and it can be reliable if done properly. So, who am I? I am Amir Rustamzadeh. I am an engineer on the Cypress I/O team. Feel free to reach out to me, Twitter or email, if you have any questions about the talk. So before we jump into things, let's visit the testing pyramid. This is the pyramid that's typically shown when people talk about testing. At the bottom of the pyramid here, we have unit tests, and then we move up to integration tests and end-to-end tests finally. The reason why unit tests are at the very bottom of the pyramid is because developers love to write a bunch of these unit tests, right? They're very easy to write. We have a lot of fantastic tools to write them with. But as we move up the pyramid and get to end-to-end testing, we find that writing end-to-end tests can be difficult, costly, slow, flaky, and this leads to a lot of people actually just not writing end-to-end tests, which is not very good because the best kind of test to ensure a great experience for users is end-to-end tests. It's great for them, it's great for the business, it's great for everyone, but it's difficult. So before we get into the nitty-gritty parts, let's kind of step back and look at the renaissance of the web we've been seeing for the past decade or so. And this is just within the context of frameworks that have come out that have made web development significantly easier. You know, around 2005 or so, we had things like Ruby on Rails and Django come out, and they made it significantly easier to write applications. This is during the time we had things like Twitter and Shopify and things like that come out. It was just a hell of a lot easier to write these types of apps. It gave us a nice construct to think and reason about. Shortly after, we had things like jQuery come out, which made it really easy to write JavaScript across multiple browsers. It kind of normalized all those little edge cases that you would experience writing JavaScript. And during this time frame, you know, this is 2006, then we had like smartphones come out around 2007, and more people started using actual software as part of their daily life. They started to rely on it more and more, and they were experiencing very well done applications. They were very snappy, they were very user friendly, and this is what majority of people, not us techie guys, but you know, they started to demand these types of experiences about all the software they were experiencing. And this essentially, you know, around the same time, browsers got their act together, right? They started actually playing nice with standards, and computers got a little faster too. And then we ended up with very fancy frameworks like React and Vue.js. So now we're starting to write very rich web applications, which are very snappy. They give a really good user experience and just fantastic overall. One important thing to note here is that this progress is essentially led to the movement of complexity from the back end to the front end. In the past, we would just render very simple HTML and ship it down the wire. But now, we're sending really large JavaScript applications down the wire. So the way we write applications have significantly changed. But the way we've been testing them has not changed. Tools have always improved, they have always progressed. But the way we've done end-to-end testing has changed very little. Before all this new fancy frameworks came out, all the way back in 2004, Selenium came out, which many of you probably have used to end-to-end test your websites. Shortly after, Selenium WebDriver came out, and there have been other wrappers and tools that have made using Selenium much more easier to use. To kind of give a framework of time here, Cypress Sideout came out in 2014. So the gist of this point here is that the way we've been writing applications has changed, but the way we're testing them has changed very little. Let's look at the status quo of end-to-end testing, which is Selenium. Now, the architecture of Selenium is like this. You write your tests in any language you want, and your tests essentially talk to the proxy server of Selenium. Selenium server is just the proxy server. And Selenium server makes requests to the web drivers that are actually controlling the browser to make your tests happen. And what we have here is the classical syncing dilemma. We have two separate systems, and we're constantly trying to keep them in sync together. This is very difficult to do because Selenium can only ask about what's going on in the browser. It doesn't actually know what's going on at the right time. This is what essentially leads to flakiness and non-deterministic tests. Selenium has to go through this proxy server and has to wait for all these network hops to happen before it can actually know what's going on. It's not, it doesn't know exactly when an event took place in the browser. And some of you might say, well, to hell with it all, I'll just use JSDOM or some other type of DOM emulation. Well, the thing is, none of your users are using JSDOM to run your application. None of them, 0. So you have to do real browser testing, and that enables you to test your users' real actions. It's the best way to do end-to-end testing, and it's the primary reason you would do end-to-end testing, because you want to simulate your users' actual actions. And the thing is, which I really want to emphasize, is that don't let your users be the first ones to test your end-to-end test your application, right? It's going to be a bad experience for them, and it's going to cost you time and money, and it's just not good all around for anyone. Some people like to rely on, let's say, like a crash reporting service or error reporting service. They were like, well, I'll ship my application out, and if anything goes wrong, well, my error reporting service is going to tell me what went wrong, and I can just go ahead and fix it. Well, the thing is, not all errors are perfect errors that can be caught by your crash reporter. They don't all have stack traces. They could be simply user experience problems. And frankly, most users don't actually report problems when they see them. So this is not the way to go. You need to be testing the exact experience of your users before you ship your software. It's the only way you can confidently expect that everything is going to go smoothly. So let's get back to kind of the historical context of things. In the past, we mostly wrote stateless websites, right? Very simple stuff, ship HTML down the wire. Now we're writing very stateful apps, and it's a completely different ball game. They're just completely different beasts, and we need a much more optimal way of testing these types of applications. And this is why Cypress exists. So Cypress is a really nice and fast and easy way for you to test anything that runs in the browser. It's completely free, it's open source, and it's MIT licensed. It's very easy to install. All you got to do is just npm install Cypress. And with that, you're going to get everything you need. You're going to get the familiar tools that you've probably seen before, like Mocha, test framework, chai assertions, and sign-on for stubbing and mocking. So with a simple install line, you're going to get everything all in one tool. All right, so let's go ahead and see it in action for a little bit. OK. So I'm going to demonstrate a To-Do MVC app. If you're not familiar with To-Do MVC, it's essentially a to-do application that's implemented in various frameworks to kind of show how it would look in those frameworks if you were going to write a to-do app. So the way I launch Cypress is by just typing in, after I've installed it, I can just type in npx. Let me make that a little bigger. Cypress is a binary that just goes into my node modules. So that's why I'm using npx right here to run the local version of Cypress. And I'm just going to type in Cypress open. Let's get the sizing down here and give some people a chance to sit down, new people coming in. So the Cypress command is going to bring up the desktop GUI that is Cypress. This is an Electron application, and what it shows you when it first launches is all the spec files that exist in your project directory. This is a simple to-do application. There's only one spec file to test everything. So the way I can start my test, I just have to select the spec file that I want, simply click on it, and Cypress is going to immediately bring up a browser, Electron in this case, and it's going to start running my tests after it has pulled in that to-do application. As you can see, Cypress runs very fast, and actually once the GUI is up, it's going to start up the browser very fast as well. So right now, this is a to-do app. It's going through all the various permutations of a to-do application, creating new to-dos, marking them complete, making sure the right count of to-dos exists, and so on. So let's hit that. Let's get that finished. Bada bing, bada boom, and we're done. All tests pass, yay. So this is your Cypress experience. This is how it will look like. Cypress runs right alongside your application. It runs within the same run loop as your application. So it knows exactly what's going on in your application. It can react quickly. It can make assertions right away. Unlike, let's say, Selenium, where it has to just make a request over the wire, and hopefully it will get back the right information it needs in time. So let's look at what we're seeing here. On the right-hand side, this is your application. We loaded in an iframe on the right-hand side. And up top, this is the URL that correlates to what you're seeing on the page. And on the left-hand side, this is what's called a command log. This shows all your test suites and all the tests that were executed. Let's look at the first one, which is we're asserting that when the app loads, the cursor should be focused in the input box, which makes sense because, right when you open a to-do app, you want to immediately start typing in to-do items. And as we hover over different Cypress commands that were executed right here, we'll see the app on the right-hand side change. Cypress takes a DOM snapshot of, whenever it runs a command, so it can show you exactly what happened with each command. So the first thing we do is we visit the root directory of this app, that's why we're not seeing anything yet. After we visited it, we're going to use the Cypress focus command to assert that we are focused in this input box. And as I hover over that, it will actually select that input box. If you look at another test right here, actually, so we're going to create a new to-do with this test. We're going to go ahead and make a to-do item for buying some cheese. So as you can see, if I'm hovering my mouse over that command, it's alternating the before and after snapshot so I can see what happened before this command ran. And I can actually pin that DOM snapshot, and I can just see how the DOM looked like before and after myself, and I can unpin that. So what's cool about this is you can hover, and you can essentially travel back in time and see how things look like. It's a very nice way to inspect how your application is functioning. Another cool thing is that Cypress, is just running a normal Chromium browser, so you get access to DevTools right here. And whenever you hover and click on a command, it clears the console log out, and it gives you relevant information about that command that ran. So this is great when we're, especially inspecting, requests and things like that. We can see the request and response payload. It's very nice. So it's very easy to debug because you get access to DevTools right out of the box. Now let's look at something interesting. I'm going to go ahead and let's go bring that. Let's go look at that test we were running. So here's that test for making an assertion that when the app is loaded, we're focused on the input box. And this is how the test for that looks like. All Cypress commands start with this global cy command, and then you essentially have a chain of commands that you can execute. And that's how Cypress tests are written. So we're doing Sideout focused, which is asserting that, hey, are we focused on that input box? And this is how that looks like. So let's only run this test. Gotta stop this one. Oh, there we go. That's why. Okay, so now we're only running that one test. Now, this test passes. Let's go ahead and break this app right now. So I'm going to go in this app, and I'm seeing that the autofocus for this input box is set to true. Well, let's go ahead and break it and set it to false, which is going to make this test fail. Cypress is going to wait and be like, hey, I kept retrying to see if this test will pass, but it didn't. And notice this is how it looks like when problems occur. And we go out of our way to give you very human-readable messages. These are all handwritten messages. So I'm very, very proud of that. So nobody wants to see a garbled, nonsense when something goes wrong. So let's go ahead and rerun this test. And Cypress is trying to make this assertion, but I'm going to click the input box myself and force this test to pass. So the app, when your Cypress loads the app, this is your actual app. You can play with it. You can type things in right here. It's not some weird version of your app. It's the full thing. And me focusing on the input box is essentially changing the state of the DOM and making this test pass. All right. Let's exit out of here. And let's actually fix this before we move on. And let's get back to our discussion. All right. So very overly simplified view of Cypress architecture. It's that the Cypress test runner runs right alongside your app in the same run loop as your application, which is drastically different than anything out there. So the benefits of this, as I said before, you get direct native access to the DOM and therefore your app. And this allows for interesting types of tests you can run, and we'll see some of that shortly. Your tests run very fast. They run actually just as fast as your application. So that's just fantastic. You're just going to get a hell of a lot faster tests. And as you saw, Cypress, there was no wait command. There was no timeouts or anything like that. Cypress automatically retries and keeps retrying to assert the state of the DOM that you're expecting. So you don't have to mess with timeouts or waits or anything like that. And I get full access to DevTools, which it helps a lot for debugging my app. And I can have my editor and Cypress side by side. And as I'm changing my test specs, Cypress will automatically reload and run the test. So that's just fantastic. And what this all leads to is flake-free, consistent, and reliable tests. So how does Cypress make this happen? Well, here's an example. We got 3 commands that are running. These are very simple. They're just trying to select 3 DOM elements. Cypress will look at this, and it will essentially queue these commands up and run them in the order that you've declared them. So it will run the first one, second one, third one, exactly how you've written it. In this way, things happen deterministically. So as I said, you get direct access to the DOM, and this allows for cool types of tests. My brilliant colleague, Gleb Bamatov, has written a series of component testing libraries for all your favorite frameworks out there. And what this essentially allows you to do is take one of your components that you've written, let's say in React. You can just take just that one component in isolation and mount it to a real browser DOM, and then you can run Cypress tests against it. So let's go ahead and see an example of this. I will be showing this to you in the Vue version. So let's go ahead and we'll wait for that to open up. So this is essentially an example within the Cypress Vue unit test library. It's a simple counter component, which is not interesting. But the part that is interesting is that this counter uses Vuex to manage its state. If you're not familiar with Vuex, it's like Redux. It's just a central state store. Let's just see how it runs. There we go. Woo! We got a nice little counter. So that's how it looks like. But more importantly, we want to look at the code for this. So the Cypress Vue unit test library is going to give you this mount Vue function. If you were using Cypress React unit test, you would get a mount function for mounting React components. And before each test, I can go ahead and mount my component however I wish. So I'm passing in the template for my component, the central store instance for it to use, any extensions or anything else I want to use along with it. And it will just take that component and mount it to the DOM. And here's the cool part. I can directly manipulate the state of this app with just plain old JavaScript. The Cypress View Unit Test library is going to give me a view instance on the Cypress global variable right here. And I can directly get access to the central store, and I can get the state of the count in the counter, or I can change the state. I can change this directly in my tests. Now, a real-world example of this is, let's say you want to test your login page, right? And you need to authenticate before you can do other things in your test. Well, maybe you only need to do that once via the UI of your app, right? You go ahead and you type in your username, password, then you hit the login button in your tests. But do you really need to do that every single time you want to authenticate to run one test? No, you just want to do it once. Now you have confidence that the login UI works. And then every other time you need authentication in your test, you would simply authenticate that user via JavaScript directly. You don't have to keep going through the UI just to authenticate. You can just do it in plain old JavaScript, and this is going to be a much faster way of running your tests. Let's close that out. OK, so far I've just been showing you the Cypress open command. You've constantly seen me run Cypress open. And that's great for your everyday development workflow. Cypress on one side, editor on one side, test-driven development. Voila. Well, there's a whole other side to Cypress, and that's you can run it headlessly using the Cypress run command. This is great for running Cypress tests in your CI, and it's a much more efficient way of running all your tests. Any real-world app has like hundreds, thousands of tests, and there's no need to run that like visually. You can, but it's just a hell of a lot faster running them headlessly. And the cool thing about running Cypress headlessly is that you can actually get a recording, a video recording of your entire test run by just passing in this record flag, and we'll see that. Let's go ahead and so that to-do MVC app I had, we fixed it right here, and let's go ahead and remove this only right here, and let's bring it back up. Okay. So now I'm going to run Cypress run past the record flag, and there's also this key flag. This key flag is provided by Cypress, and it uniquely identifies your project. And this is useful when you're using the Cypress dashboard, which is a complementary service to Cypress, and we'll see that shortly. But I'm going to go ahead and run this, and this is going to bring up a headless browser, and it's going to start running Cypress headlessly. Great, now it's brought them up. Oh, I don't think I have proper internet connection here. That's probably why it didn't set that message while it's running. Let's see. Cool. Oh. Is that the one? Anyone know the password? What is it? Who is sports? Horse. There we go. That's right? Thank you. Oh, cool. So while that's doing that, my test run ran, and it ran headlessly. And after it was done, it gave me the path to the video it took of my tests. So I can actually bring that up, and I can play that. And so this is exactly what you were seeing in the browser. It's the exact video of that entire test run. Cool. OK, so now this leads to the whole other part of Cypress, which is this complementary dashboard service, which is actually also optional to use. But it's great when you're running tests in CI, because when it's running in CI, you have no idea what's going on in the browser. You don't know how it looks like. You need a way to see what's going on. And the dashboard records all your tests. It tells you which specs ran, which ones passed or failed. It will show you error messages. It will show you video recordings like the ones you just saw. It will show you screenshots. Automatic screenshots are taken when something goes wrong. So it's great for that. And we can actually take a quick look at that. So here's an example of actually one of our own tests. This is test for the Cypress dashboard. We use Cypress internally, obviously, to test everything. We use Cypress to test Cypress. Yeah, so the dashboard's great for that. This is an example of a test run where things failed for whatever reason, and we have those exact error messages of things went wrong. They're right here, exactly how you see them. You can see the exact standard output, kind of like how you would see them in CI. You get to see screenshots of the problem place, and you can see videos, kind of like the one you just saw right now. So it's great for that, and you can actually, let's look at one that passed. So a passing test will look like this. And we'll get to some of this cool stuff in a little bit. So until recently, the dashboard was just for seeing what's going on in your CI environment. It was great for that. It's also great for collaboration because you can link your coworkers, here, this is the exact thing that went wrong. Here's a video of it. Here's a screenshot of it. But now, we recently released the Cypress 3.1, which adds the parallelization feature. And we've kind of been, now very vocal about this feature, and we haven't talked too much about it publicly. So this is the first time we've ever talked about it publicly. So, congratulations. So yeah, 3.1 is out. It's been, and we're offering parallelization in that, and it's been a long-awaited feature. And what parallelization allows you to do is it can automatically load balance your test runs across your CI resources. And all you got to do is bring up how many CI resources you want, 3 machines, 10 machines, whatever. And all you got to do is just pass this new parallel flag in when you're running your test. Let's go ahead and see how this works. So let's say you configure your CI environment to use 3 machines. And this is what's going to happen. The first machine is going to contact Cypress, and it's going to be like, hey, buddy, I'm ready for some work, and here are all the tests that I need to run for this project. We're like, cool. Great. We're going to now intelligently figure out what is the first thing this new machine is supposed to do. Which test spec should this machine run? Well, we determine, and we'll see how that's done, that this machine should go ahead and start with the login spec to test the login page. And then the second machine is going to be like, all right, I'm ready too. And then we're like, OK, great. You can do the sign-up page. And then the third one, here, you can test this widget. And this all happens, obviously, in parallel. So as you can see, now we can optimally use our CI resources. Now, how do we know which spec to give first and which to do second, which to give third, right? How do we go about doing that? Well, this is how we do load balancing. When you start using the Cypress dashboard, you're recording your test to it. And Cypress is in a very intimate relationship with your tests. It knows everything about them, how long it takes to run each of your specs. And so we have a test duration history of any given spec. And then we do some clever math, do some analysis on that, and then we can forecast how long the next test run for a given spec will take. Once we have that information, we've configured it so that we'll run the longest test first, because it's going to take the longest. We should probably get started on that first, right? And we do this on the fly for every test spec that you want to test. So we'll go ahead and automatically compute and forecast how long it's going to take to run the login spec and sign-up spec and widget spec. And then this is how we go about load balancing them across your CI environment. And so what this allows you to do is get the most bang for buck from your CI, right? Because yes, you can say that you're using Circle CI and you can configure it to have 10 machines running. Great. but it's kind of like having a really powerful computer and not having the proper software to use all the cores and all the memory, right? But Cypress allows you to optimize your test runs across your CI resources. And what this essentially leads to is you saving a lot of time and money because your tests run faster and the developers cost a lot. So we can actually go ahead and look at how a parallelized test run looks like. This is for actually our Cypress dashboard. I think I had another one. There we go. This one. This one's good. Okay. Let's go to this one. All right. So this is showing you 3 different test runs over here. And we've labeled them, and I'll show you how that labeling works. It's actually a new feature as well. And you see, like, this one says 2x Chrome. Let me zoom that a little bit. 2x Chrome. Another one says like 1x Electron, 4x Electron. This is just a naming convention we're using to say, okay, this test run was testing in Chrome, and it used two CI machines to run this test, and this one uses 4 machines. So if you look at the duration history of each one of these, for example, if we look at the Electron test, the one that just used 1 machine, it took 2 minutes 38 seconds, and the one we used 4 machines only took 46 seconds. And 2 minutes 38 seconds is not a lot, but when you're looking, this is just the example project, but when you're running this against a real big project, you're really going to see the time savings here, and it only aggregates over time. And the next thing we have that's with 3.1 is now we enable you to group all your test runs together. It's like a nice general purpose way of grouping different test runs. So for example, you want to test your main user-facing front-end app, and you want to label that as like front-end. And then you want to test like your admin page or your admin application, then you can label that as admin. So then when you go to the dashboard, kind of like you saw here, we use like the names 2x Chrome, 1x Electron, whatever, but these are the group names we chose, and we're able to see them all in one test run. We group them all together. You get to see them all in one page, and this is how like you can associate them all together. And so if we kind of look at these parallelized tests, and this is kind of like a timeline view. It's very similar to like how the DevTools waterfall network view looks like. So you can see like we ran the action spec first, and then and so on. And the longest one ran first. And as we go down, the duration of the test specs gets smaller. You can like hover over them and get some more information about them. And then there's this lower number that shows you like which machine ran this. So this tells me that this spec was ran with machine number 2. Cool. All right. And another thing to know about Cypress is that it has fantastic documentation. It's something that we're actually very proud of. So whenever you have any questions, it's like the first place you should go to. It has also great search, so you get to see everything there. And we literally have a command to do anything, and so refer to that, please. And then we also have a best practices page, and there's actually a video of the creator of Cypress. He gave a talk on best practices, and there's the link for that, and I'll be sharing these slides. So that's another one I recommend. He goes over how to organize and write your tests. And to conclude, Cypress, we're completely trying to change the status quo of end-to-end testing. It's something that's been very difficult to do properly in the past, and we're hell-bent on just completely changing that and creating the best testing experience that this industry has ever seen. And I'm here with Randall Kent. He's one of the co-founders of Cypress, so we'll be around if you guys want to talk to us and chat with us. And thank you, happy testing, and go ahead and try out Cypress. Thanks.